Alarming reports of a surge in sudden deaths amid CCP virus resurgence in China raise concerns. Alarming surge in CCP official deaths amid pandemic crisis. Foreigners exit China amid COVID-19 controls and changing attitudes, raising concerns for China's appeal. CCP's shocking military purge reveals empty missile silos and mysterious deaths. China defies U.S. ban on NVIDIA chips, fuels underground market, amid calls for chip export control upgrades. Alarming reports of a surge in sudden deaths amid CCP virus resurgence in China raise concerns. The Chinese Communist authorities finally acknowledged the epidemic on the 14th and stated that there was a resurgence of the epidemic in January. However, many people revealed that the epidemic was very serious, and many people around them died suddenly after being infected. On January 14th, the Chinese Communist Party's Health Commission held a press conference claiming that the CCP virus epidemic may rebound in China this month and that the Xi'an mutant strain will most likely develop into a dominant epidemic strain in China. However, the outside world generally doubts that the CCP is still concealing the severity of the epidemic. Dong Yuhong, a European virology and infectious disease expert, the Xi'an variant not only increases its transmissibility, but also causes immune escape. In layman's terms, it means that previously vaccinated vaccines no longer work. On January 12th, an insider broke the news that Xi'an, a 45-year-old anesthesiologist, passed away suddenly on January 11th. Xi'an's colleague, a doctoral supervisor at Capital Medical University, CG Tuka, had previously revealed on social media he was infected with the new coronavirus mutant strain, which caused myocardial infarction and died suddenly. Ms. Li, a villager in Baoding. There are people around me. I know there are 3 of them. Yesterday, my mother said that her friend was also in his 40s. He was sleeping because he had a cold recently. Mr. Chai, a Beijing citizen. The hospital is overcrowded, and you have to queue for a long time. These are all sudden deaths from myocardial infarction and cerebral infarction, as well as sudden death from heart diseases. Many people and experts believe that the outbreak in China in recent months is the CCP virus infection. Ms. Liu, an employee of a state-owned enterprise in Baotu. Since September, 3 people I know have died, and there is a girl who is very good to me. She is 1 year younger than me. She suddenly suffered a cerebral hemorrhage. There is also a girl who suffered from cerebral hemorrhage. People with heart disease usually look fine and are fine. Dong Yuhong, an expert in virology and infectious diseases, also pointed out that this wave of epidemics can be judged to be dominated by the new coronavirus, Chinese Communist Party virus. Sudden death caused by the new coronavirus is triggered by several pathological causes. Dong Yuhong. 1 is an acute cardiomyopathy caused by viral infection, and the other is acute coronary syndrome, which leads to the formation of large-scale microthrombi in blood vessels, including pulmonary embolism or a thrombus in the arterioles of the heart. There are also thrombus in the arterioles of the brain. There are also some electrolyte imbalances and other conditions that can lead to sudden death. Alarming surge in CCP official deaths amid pandemic crisis. The National Health Commission of the Communist Party of China held a press conference on January 14th, warning that the country may experience a resurgence of the new coronavirus infection epidemic due to factors such as the development of the Xi'an mutant strain and declining population immunity. This resurgence could lead to a peak in the epidemic once again. Amidst this backdrop, there has been a notable increase in the deaths of Chinese Communist Party CCP officials, with at least 14 officials passing away due to illness from January 1st to January 14th of the current year. Among these officials were prominent figures like Zhang Kehui, former vice chairman of the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, Colonel Hao Jiping, an advisor to the political department of the General Staff, Xue Zhu, former secretary of the Zhejiang Provincial Party Committee, Zhou Daozhong, former chairman of the China Securities Regulatory Commission, and Sun Zaifu, former deputy secretary of the Hunan Provincial Party Committee. Zhang Kehui, born in Taiwan, joined the CCP while studying in mainland China and held various influential positions within the party. Hao Jiping, the third wife of Luo Riqing, a prominent CCP figure, endured harsh treatment during the Cultural Revolution. Xue Zhu and Zhou Daozhong held significant roles within the Chinese government, while Sun Zaifu was a high-ranking member of the Discipline Inspection Commission. Additionally, 9 other local CCP officials died of illness in the first 10 days of the new year. These deaths, combined with the ongoing epidemic, raise concerns about the health of party members and the broader population. The Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention reported 88 new severe cases and 11 deaths related to the epidemic from December 1 to December 31, 2023. Medical experts have warned that the number of infections may increase further with the spread of the Xi'an.1 strain, and reduced immunity among the population could lead to more severe cases and deaths. In a normal country, the government would prioritize medical prevention and treatment in the face of a significant health crisis. However, in the context of the CCP, concerns have arisen over the increased use of mobile cremation vehicles that are seen operating throughout China. These vehicles are advertised as being smoke-free, exhaust-free, odorless, and legally qualified for harmless treatment. Some speculate that these vehicles, originally designed for pet cremations, could potentially be used for human remains, raising unsettling questions about their purpose. Critics argue that the CCP has a long history of disregarding human life and embracing destruction and violence. From the Cultural Revolution to the suppression of religious and cultural practices, the CCP has often been accused of acting against the values of compassion and morality. Now, as the CCP faces challenges, some see it as facing divine retribution for its actions. It is worth noting that some individuals have advocated quitting the CCP as a way to ensure personal safety. This call to withdraw from the party is based on the belief that the epidemic primarily targets CCP members and those who support the party. The recommendation is to visit the CCP withdrawal website and follow the provided instructions to disassociate from the party, even using a pseudonym if necessary. The urgency of this decision is underscored by the rapid spread of the epidemic, with many individuals seemingly healthy one day and infected the next. According to mainland media reports, sudden deaths in China are alarmingly high, with one Chinese person dying suddenly every minute, often attributed to heart disease. Foreigners exit China amid COVID-19 controls and changing attitudes, raising concerns for China's appeal. As reported by the South China Morning Post on January 15th, an increasing number of foreigners who endured 3 years of strict COVID-19 controls in China are leaving the country. This departure comes despite the Chinese authorities' efforts to reopen and revive the economy. The reasons behind their decision to leave vary, but some common factors include growing wariness, even hostility towards foreigners, and concerns about a potential repeat of lockdown experiences. Tensions between China and the West have been on the rise, and some foreigners in China fear that these tensions could affect their day-to-day interactions and raise concerns about national security. One such individual is Sophie Redding, a British PE teacher working at an international school in Wuhan, the city where the coronavirus was first detected. Several factors contributed to her decision to return to the UK last month. Her partner faced visa issues in Wuhan, and Redding began to feel that the city, which she had once considered home, had become less welcoming. She described instances of strangers asking her to leave, and even experiencing discrimination from service providers. China's strict anti-epidemic policies, including severe restrictions on domestic and international travel and extended lockdowns in cities like Shanghai, have frustrated many foreigners. Before the outbreak in 2020, the number of foreigners living in Shanghai had already decreased by more than 20% over the preceding decade, and Beijing saw a 40% decrease to 63,000 foreign residents. While these figures date back to November 2020, it is expected that the trend of foreign residents leaving China has continued over the past 2 years due to ongoing strict epidemic controls. Redding's sentiments are shared by other foreigners who have observed a change in Chinese people's attitudes and experienced difficulty in making new friends. Some have noted a subtle hesitation among locals, which they attribute to heightened geopolitical tensions. The COVID-19 era has left lasting scars, with some individuals fearing that authorities might reimpose strict controls on movement and activities. One Russian-born American art teacher who had spent 13 years in Shanghai cited this fear as her primary reason for returning to the United States. She expressed her appreciation for Chinese culture, but voiced concerns about the uncertainty of future lockdowns and the possibility of being separated from family for an extended period. James Zimmerman, a partner at international law firm Perkins Coie and former president of the American Chamber of Commerce in China, highlighted that individuals and businesses alike are leaving China due to a combination of factors, including economic weakness, compliance risks, and geopolitical tensions. While China remains an attractive consumer market, foreign companies are reconsidering their presence in the country and exploring alternatives amid the evolving geopolitical landscape. The COVID-19 pandemic has prompted some companies to diversify their supply chains by seeking alternatives outside of China, further contributing to the challenges China faces in retaining foreign talent and investments. CCP's shocking military purge reveals empty missile silos and mysterious deaths. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, has been on a relentless purge of its military leadership, which began last year and continues to this day. This extensive campaign has resulted in the removal of 12 senior generals from their positions as representatives of the National People's Congress and members of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference at the end of the previous year. Recent reports have revealed the arrests of Liu Shiquan, chairman and party secretary of China Ordnance Industry Group Co., Lotadier, and Chen Guoying, general manager of China Ordnance Equipment Group. These developments have left both the group headquarters and provincial military-industrial groups across China in a state of turmoil, with a sense of uncertainty hanging over everything and everyone. As of now, the CCP has not officially confirmed these arrests. Media commentator Li Muyang suggests that while the outside world cannot independently verify this revelation, it is not surprising, given that Xi Jinping seems to believe that no one within the CCP can be entirely trusted. This sentiment has been exacerbated by the ongoing CCP Rocket Army Den case, implicating several high-level officials in the military and ordnance industry. Notably, many of these individuals are also involved in ordnance production for the rocket force, and the likelihood of their involvement in these arrests appears to be substantial. In early reports, Bloomberg cited U.S. intelligence and online sources, outlining two primary reasons for the CCP's purging of rocket force and military industry executives. The first reason is the alleged use of water instead of fuel in missile production, while the second concerns the inability of missile silo covers to launch missiles. However, an even more startling revelation has emerged from recent sources that the CCP's missile silos are empty cities, with 95% of them containing no missiles. If this information is accurate, it would represent a far more serious situation than the intelligence obtained by the United States. Such a revelation could cast doubt on the CCP's military capabilities, particularly in relation to Taiwan. Xi Jinping has repeatedly stated his unwillingness to renounce the use of force to unify Taiwan with mainland China. The recent election of Taiwan's new president, framed by the CCP as a choice between war and peace, has not deterred the CCP's rhetoric or actions. Despite verbal opposition to Taiwan independence and insistence on the One China, One Taiwan narrative, the CCP's efforts have been largely limited to military exercises and the presence of aircraft and warships near Taiwan's borders. These actions have done little to further their cause and have even been met with ridicule. Chen Guoying had not been publicly seen or heard from for over 5 months, with his last public appearance recorded in July. His disappearance mirrors that of Li Sangbok, the former defense minister who has been missing for an extended period without any official explanation. In mid-September, media reports indicated that Chen Guoying had been taken away at the same time as Tan Ruisong, the former chairman of Aviation Industry Corporation of China. Additionally, Liu Shiquan's removal as a member of the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference in December confirmed that something significant had occurred. Nevertheless, news regarding Yuan Ji and Chen Guoying's fate remains undisclosed, potentially to mitigate the perceived impact on the CCP's image. China defies U.S. ban on NVIDIA chips, fuels underground market, amid calls for chip export control upgrades. Despite the U.S. ban on exporting chips to China, a recent Reuters report has revealed that various Chinese military agencies, state-owned AI research institutions, and universities have been purchasing NVIDIA chips, including the A100 and H100 models, which were banned from export to China and Hong Kong by the United States in 2022. These purchases also included slower A800 and H800 chips developed by NVIDIA specifically for the Chinese market, but which were also banned later. NVIDIA's graphics processing units, GPUs, are renowned for their superiority in handling the substantial data requirements of artificial intelligence, AI, and machine learning tasks. China's ongoing demand for these banned NVIDIA chips underscores the lack of comparable alternatives among Chinese companies, even though Chinese tech giant Huawei is working on developing its own chips. Before the export ban, NVIDIA held a dominating 90% share of China's AI chip market. Interestingly, some of the buyers identified in the Reuters report were entities subject to U.S. export restrictions, such as the Harbin Institute of Technology and the University of Electronic Science and Technology of China. These institutions have been accused by the U.S. of involvement in Chinese military activities. The report also highlights that tenders for these chips in China often lack transparency, making it difficult to ascertain who wins the bids and for what purposes the chips are being used. While most of the purchases were in small quantities, they can still contribute to enhancing existing AI models and conducting various machine learning tasks. Furthermore, an underground market for these chips has emerged in China since the imposition of U.S. restrictions. In places like the Huaqiangbei Electronics District in Shenzhen, customers can purchase high-end U.S.-made chips, including NVIDIA's, albeit at a premium price. These chips are often sold for significantly higher prices than their retail value. It is challenging to estimate the extent of chip flow into China through this underground market. In response to these developments, the U.S. Department of Commerce has launched an investigation aimed at strengthening the semiconductor supply chain, ensuring fair competition for chip production, and addressing national security concerns related to China's chip supply chain. U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina M. Raimondo emphasized the need for industry involvement in these efforts and mentioned that the government alone cannot secure a robust supply chain. The investigation comes in the wake of a U.S. Congressional Committee report that recommended resetting the economic relationship between the United States and China, including raising tariffs on certain products. The report expressed concerns about China's efforts to boost semiconductor production by its companies while impeding U.S. competitors. over 34 years since the infamous day of June 4, 1989, when the Chinese communist regime ruthlessly suppressed a peaceful demonstration, leaving an indelible mark on history. The right to peaceful assembly in China remains tightly shackled, a testament to the authoritarian grip on power. Authorities persistently label protest activities and public gatherings as disruptions to public order. Under the unyielding rule of President Xi Jinping, restrictions on protests have intensified, creating formidable barriers for citizens attempting to voice their opinions through open demonstrations. During that tragic event, the Chinese military callously gunned down hundreds, potentially thousands, of individuals who had courageously gathered in Beijing's Tiananmen Square and nearby areas, advocating for political reform. The precise number of casualties remains obscured due to the oppressive censorship enforced by Chinese authorities, suppressing any discourse regarding the brutal crackdown. Nevertheless, individuals of courage, undeterred by the looming threat of arrest, persist in stepping forward to articulate their dissenting views. The worker rights movement in 2023, unprecedented protests in China, CCP unable to suppress. China Labor Bulletin's data screams the intensification of worker rights incidents, a whopping 741 cases in the first half of the year, and a staggering surge to 1,178 in the following 6 months. The online realm echoes with reports of an unrelenting surge in rights-related turmoil throughout December 2023. This chaos isn't confined. It's erupting in every nook and cranny, with Guangdong province seizing the notorious crown in factory labor disputes. Brace yourself for the seismic force of China's worker rights movement. CLB's latest data, a gut-wrenching 1,919 incidents as of December 27th, shatters the combined figures of the past 3 years. Yet this revelation is merely scratching the surface of the upheaval. Post the late 2022 pandemic lockdown lift, substantial worker rights upheavals have surged since January 2023. Notably, the layoffs at Chongqing Zhongyuan Huiji Biotechnology Company on January 8th, stemming from canceled orders, sparked protests and violent clashes, involving an estimated 20,000 workers. Concurrently, on January 7th, in Chongqing Daduko, layoffs at Zhongyuan Huiji Pharmaceutical Factory spurred extensive demonstrations and violent conflicts. Within a day, hundreds from Hangzhou Aotai Biotechnology Company gathered, protesting wage and layoff issues, eventually transforming into a march towards the local government building. Throughout the year, there have been continuous workers' protests. By December, worker rights events were increasingly prevalent. From December 19th to 22nd, over 2,000 workers staged protests in Dezhou, Shandong Province. The cause was the closure of Yangmei Puhuang Chemical Company, a subsidiary of a state-owned enterprise in Dezhou, resulting in 2,500 people losing their jobs. However, the company, without implementing a layoff plan, reduced workers' wages and even placed them on unpaid leave. On December 27th in Shenyang, Liaoning, employees of the state-owned China Communications Second Navigation Bureau Municipal Construction Company rallied to claim unpaid wages. On December 24th and 25th, the bankruptcy of Shanghai's BYD supermarket led to a gathering of 800 employees protesting an unfair compensation plan. From December 22nd to 24th, in Yongji City, Shanxi, over 900 workers from the bankrupt Yongji Chemical Fertilizer Plant, a subsidiary of the state-owned China National Agrochemical Corporation, held continuous protests inside and outside the factory, demanding fair settlements. On December 19th, a collective jumping incident over wage disputes occurred at Yingsai Hardware Products Company in Dongguan, Guangdong. The fundamental cause of the massive worker rights movement is undoubtedly an inevitable result of the collapse of the entire Chinese economy, a fundamental manifestation. As private enterprises retract amid state advancement, CCP's relentless suppression of industries erodes confidence, leading to a contraction of domestic capital. State-owned enterprises controlled by corruption and power have plundered everything. Major layoffs strain the social security system, pushing those on the brink into a fight for basic living rights. In mainland China, the recent worker rights surge, potentially the largest and most intense, reflects a dire reality: extreme poverty, shattered lives, and a desperate need for fair wages and job opportunities. 2022, the blank paper movement. A recent example occurred at the end of 2022 when thousands took to the streets across China to express anger over the new COVID-19 restrictions implemented at the time. A fatal fire in a sealed residential building in Urumqi, China, triggered protests nationwide, marking one of the largest demonstrations in China in years. Peaceful protesters took to the streets to commemorate the victims of the Urumqi fire and called for the relaxation of pandemic restrictions. The discontent stemmed from harsh lockdowns, the unnecessary sacrifice of income and lives due to a seemingly endless and irrational government policy, and a broader dissatisfaction with the direction of the country under CCP leadership. Just over a year ago, in November 2022, Chinese students and residents staged unprecedented white paper protests, wielding blank sheets as symbols of censorship, chanting slogans like "Xi Jinping step down" and "Down with the Chinese Communist Party." These demonstrations posed a direct challenge to the CCP, rivaling the defiance seen during the 1989 Tiananmen Square incident, marking a significant confrontation with CCP authority in decades. Videos shared on social media revealed protests erupting at universities and in cities across China, including Beijing, Guangdong, Shanghai, and Wuhan. Subsequently, many protesters were arrested, an uncommon occurrence in China for spontaneous protests of this magnitude. For many of these young people in their early 20s, this was their first time taking part in protests of any kind, with slogans such as "We don't want COVID tests, we want freedom, we want dignity," and "United with the Uyghurs, the people of Hong Kong and Taiwan." The protests' objectives were not necessarily aligned. They nonetheless represented a political awakening for many of their participants, as well as a political opportunity that brought together different stripes of anti-CCP elements. This is remarkable. Since 1989, no single cause has been able to resonate with the people, let alone unite them across income strata, ethnic groups, and geographical regions. These were no longer just protests. They should more accurately be termed a white paper movement, because they took place across geographical boundaries and were sustained over a significant period of time. Hence, the CCP's recognition that the unrest constituted the single greatest challenge to its rule in decades. The challenges revealed by the white paper protests do not necessarily mean the CCP will collapse anytime soon. It is entirely possible for the party to keep ruling the country while popular discontent persists. However, the CCP is facing strong headwinds in maintaining its grip on society since the abrupt end of the zero-COVID policy. Declining economic growth rates, mounting local government debts, and a hostile geopolitical environment now pose further challenges to its capacity to maintain its power. This makes 2024 a particularly interesting year to watch for signs of the CCP's continuing durability. 2018 Jasic Workers Incident. In July 2018, workers at Jasic Technology, a welding equipment manufacturer in Shenzhen, attempted to form a union. Within days, 3 workers were arrested. Students, workers' rights advocates, and other workers who supported the arrested initiated protest activities but faced detention or harassment. Many Marxist student groups involved in the Jasic workers' movement were either disbanded or forced to reorganize. 2012 and 2120 New Citizens Movement. Founded by legal scholar Xu Jiang in 2012, the New Citizens Movement was a loose network of activists aiming to promote government transparency and expose corruption. In December 2019, dozens of lawyers and activists associated with the New Citizens Movement participated in an informal gathering in Xi'an, China, leading to subsequent targeted actions against them. The group, including Xu Jiang, regularly convened to discuss China's civil society and current affairs. Later that month, police nationwide began summoning or detaining those who had participated in the Xiamen gathering. In April 2023, Xu Zhiyong and human rights lawyer Ding Jiaxi were each sentenced to 14 and 12 years in prison, respectively. 2012-2015, Feminist Movement. Since Xi Jinping came to power in 2012, limited freedom of speech and peaceful assembly spaces have further diminished, as online censorship tightened and control over non-governmental organizations strengthened. e.g., through the overseas NGO law, activists and civic groups found it increasingly challenging to mobilize large-scale protests. However, dissent continued. In 2012, a new form of feminist movement emerged, known for its street actions and atomized feminist protests, sometimes involving just one participant. Subsequently, the Chinese government systematically repressed the feminist movement through tactics such as defaming and harassing female participants, shutting down gender-related societies in universities, and censoring online discussions on gender and women's rights. In 2015, 5 key members of the movement were arrested and detained. Today, Chinese feminists continue their movement through offline organizing and international actions. 2011, Jasmine, Democratic Protest Movement. The Jasmine Revolution that erupted in Tunisia at the end of 2010 sparked the Arab Spring protest movements across the Middle East and North Africa. This movement also prompted Chinese citizens to call for protests online. However, after the protests occurred, state-owned media characterized the public gatherings and protest activities as disrupting public order, claiming foreign media mocked these protests as performance art. Over 100 protesters were detained, monitored, or subjected to illegal house arrest, many of whom were active on Twitter and blogs. Since then, activists have used the term performance art to circumvent government scrutiny. 1989, the Tiananmen Square incident, a painful chapter reflecting a tragic quest for democracy and human rights. The events that unfolded at Tiananmen Square on June 4, 1989, remain a dark chapter in the history of the Chinese Communist Party's rule. The peaceful protests, initially fueled by calls for political reform, were met with brutal force by the government. The global community looked on with a mix of shock and sorrow as the hope for political openness in China was brutally crushed. The events of June 4, 1989, revealed the true extent to which the Chinese Communist Party would go to maintain its control, leaving a lasting impact on the country's political landscape. Despite the passage of time, the Tiananmen Square massacre remains a sensitive and censored topic in China. The lack of official acknowledgement or accountability for the events further compounds the grief and frustration felt by those who seek justice and remembrance for the lives lost. The international community continues to advocate for human rights and political freedoms in China, with the Tiananmen Square massacre standing as a stark reminder of the challenges faced by those who strive for change in an authoritarian regime. The tragic day marked an egregious violation of human rights, as the Chinese authorities deployed the military to disperse the crowds, resulting in an unknown number of casualties, a stark reminder of the government's willingness to silence dissent at any cost. The suppression of the Tiananmen Square protests reflects the oppressive nature of the Chinese regime, prioritizing its grip on power over the well-being and democratic aspirations of its citizens. To this day, the Chinese authorities continue to prohibit the public commemoration or discussion of the Tiananmen Square incident. Previously, Hong Kong residents held annual vigils for the victims of the June 4th incident. This event had continued for 30 years, attracting hundreds of thousands of participants. However, since the implementation of the national security law by the Beijing government in 2020, this activity has been banned, and organizers of commemorative events have been detained, including human rights lawyer Chow Hang-tung. Nevertheless, people in Hong Kong, mainland China, and around the world continue to fight for the right to assembly in China. While authorities may ruthlessly suppress peaceful protests, they cannot silence the people forever. China's history of protests reflects a persistent struggle against the Chinese Communist Party's authoritative rule. From the tragic Tiananmen Square incident in 1989 to recent waves of dissent, citizens face ongoing challenges, notably showcased by the worker rights movement in 2023 and the blank paper protests of 2022. These movements expose the harsh realities of economic collapse, extreme poverty, and the urgent need for fair treatment, signifying a powerful political awakening and unified defiance against the CCP's leadership. The enduring quest for democracy and freedoms in China persists, fueled by the frustration and resilience of protesters against the oppressive policies of the Chinese Communist Party. Chinese officials accused of concealing devastating epidemic in rural northern China. Chinese investors flee slumping domestic market, pour billions into booming Japanese real estate. COVID-19 pandemic exacerbates China's population decline. Massive academic scandal exposed, shocking cheating in Chinese universities. China concealment in sharing COVID-19 information fuel global outrage. The dramatic depreciation of the yen, driven by the Bank of Japan's loose monetary policies. Wealthy Chinese individuals, faced with a bleak outlook for the Chinese real estate market, have been flocking to invest in Japanese properties. This frenzy has shown no signs of abating, with demand for real estate in Tokyo's popular areas even leading to lottery systems for property purchases. Reports reveal that Japan's real estate market has been witnessing a startling surge in prices, especially in the Tokyo metropolitan area. In November of the previous year, the average selling price of newly built apartments in Tokyo's 23 wards reached a staggering 128.11 million yen, approximately RMB 631 million, marking a year-on-year increase of a whopping 50%. This phenomenon of skyrocketing property prices in Japan started in 2022, and by 2023, as the Japanese yen's exchange rate plummeted below 4.77, foreign investors with foreign currencies began pouring into the Japanese real estate market on an unprecedented scale. Chinese buyers accounted for more than half of all housing transactions in Japan, driving the market to madness. One investor, who goes by the pseudonym Yu, shared, "The prices in this area started rising in August 2023. I bought my property in July, and I had to outbid a Chinese buyer to secure it." Another article from In the World, published on December 21st, highlighted the frenzy of Chinese investors flooding the Japanese property market, even using all-cash purchases. As Japan's real estate market defied global trends and continued to surge, it became evident that Chinese investors were making a substantial impact, frequently making headlines in Japanese media. Li Jin, a veteran Chinese real estate agent in Japan, revealed that in the past 2 years, second-hand properties in prime locations with favorable prices and high returns were being snatched up, often with Chinese investors queuing up with cash in hand. As housing prices continued to soar in Japan, wealthy Chinese individuals began purchasing large apartments with high price tags, or even buying multiple properties at once. Hiroki Kanazawa, chairman of the Osaka real estate agency Watsonsha, stated that many Chinese buyers, typically aged 40 to 50, were spending millions of yuan, settling in cash for each apartment. Zhao Jia, CEO of the Japanese real estate agency Shenzhou Miaosuan, described the scene where Chinese buyers would bring boxes of cash for payment, which he found exhausting for his agents. In stark contrast to Japan's booming property market, China's real estate market experienced a sharp decline in both prices and transaction volume over the past 2 years. Luxury property owners in China's first-tier cities began listing their properties for sale, and some even sought to move their assets abroad. Shanghai Centaline Real Estate reported a surge in listings for second-hand luxury homes since October 2022, with some properties witnessing a 30% increase in listings. This surge in listings led to a drop in prices for high-end residences. Data from China's Lianjia.com revealed that in May and June 2023, the number of luxury homes listed for sale in Shanghai surged dramatically. For instance, a record-high 235 luxury homes were listed in the super waterfront luxury district World Trade Riverside Garden in the past 8 years. This stark disparity between the thriving Japanese real estate market and the bleak Chinese counterpart has led to speculations that China's wealthy elite are abandoning their domestic real estate investments. They are capitalizing on Japan's sharply depreciated currency to invest for profit or, potentially, to discreetly transfer their assets out of China. Chinese officials accused of concealing devastating epidemic in rural northern China. There have been reports from villagers in rural areas of northern China about an ongoing health crisis. Residents claim that many people have been experiencing repeated colds and fevers, leading to numerous deaths. However, they allege that local authorities are concealing the true extent of the epidemic. One villager, who goes by the pseudonym Yang Fan, shared that the outbreak began in their village last year and has resulted in a significant number of deaths. This year, colds and fevers have continued to afflict the villagers, but poverty has left some unable to afford medical treatment, forcing them to endure their illnesses. Yang Fan described the situation. Since last year, there has been a rapid increase in deaths. This year alone, we've lost 5 or 6 people, all due to this disease. The victims are predominantly elderly individuals, while younger people are suffering from colds and children are experiencing fevers. Many have been unwell for over 2 months, with symptoms ranging from severe nasal congestion to high fever. In rural Yanjiao, Hebei province, Mr. Ma noted an increase in local funerals, with reports of people purchasing items like paper boats, paper houses, and funeral materials. This rise in funeral activity has been unusual compared to previous years. Another villager, Mr. Li from Nanyang, Henan province, claimed that many villagers have died during this epidemic, including his parents. He mentioned that in addition to the elderly, individuals aged 30 to 50 have also succumbed to the disease. However, he believes that local authorities are concealing the true nature of the epidemic, labeling it as viral influenza instead of acknowledging its more serious consequences. Mr. Li himself had experienced symptoms such as fever, colds, and body aches for over a month, leading him to suspect the presence of a more dangerous illness. Mr. Yu, a resident of Siping, Jilin, shared that sudden deaths, particularly due to myocardial infarctions or cerebral infarctions, have become increasingly common among the elderly in his village. This wave of the epidemic appears to have persisted for several months, with some residents attributing their deteriorating health to the COVID-19 vaccine. Mr. Ma from Yanjiao, Hebei province, claimed that his physical well-being significantly declined after receiving the vaccine, leaving him susceptible to recurrent infections. He mentioned a concerning situation in local kindergartens, where numerous children have fallen ill with severe colds and fevers, causing the suspension of classes. These health issues have affected a significant portion of the children and started before National Day, with recurring fevers being a common symptom. These reports depict a concerning situation in various rural areas of northern China, where residents are grappling with health issues and fatalities while expressing suspicion about the official handling and reporting of the epidemic. COVID-19 pandemic exacerbates China's population decline. Low birth rates, coupled with a wave of deaths after the CCP gave up on clearing out the epidemic, have caused China's population to decline for the second consecutive year. At the same time, youth unemployment is at an all-time high. Kang Yi, Director of Statistics of the State Council of the Communist Party of China. There were 2.08 million fewer people than at the end of the previous year. China's population has been declining for 2 consecutive years. According to the National Bureau of Statistics of the Communist Party of China, China's total population decreased by 2.08 million by the end of 2023, and the birth rate was 6.39% SARS, a record low. The natural population growth rate was negative 1.48% TAO. Since the CCP has always concealed data, the real data may be even worse. In the past 3 years, the CCP virus epidemic has caused a large number of deaths in China. Even the number of deaths last year announced by the CCP after cover-up reached the highest level since the Cultural Revolution in 1974. The Chinese people are not surprised by China's 2 consecutive years of negative population growth and record low birth rate. Wang Lan, an educator. Many children nowadays have their childhood occupied by various study classes and various papers, so the children do not have the happiness of childhood. For parents, if they feel that their children are so stressed, then the parents are more stressed than the children, and even become anxious, so they don't want the children. China's demographic structure continues to deteriorate, and the Chinese Communist Party authorities continue to introduce various incentives to try to encourage childbirth, but the results are getting worse. Telecommunications company employee Wang Weidong. Those rewards, fertility, are auxiliary, not the root cause, so I think this trend is difficult to reverse. At the same time, China's economy continues to slump. In 2023, China's youth unemployment rate will exceed 20%, reaching a record high. The decline in employee income and shrinking family wealth have further weakened young people's willingness to start a family, saying they have no money to get married, let alone raise children. Shanghai entrepreneur Li Zefan. The cost of our marriage is very high, especially in a big city like Shanghai. For example, when we get married, we may need to settle down here, and the house is definitely an indispensable thing. In terms of financial ability, it may actually put a lot of pressure on young people, including me. The high cost of marriage and childcare has deterred many Chinese young people, creating a vicious cycle. Massive academic scandal exposed. Shocking cheating allegations in Chinese universities. On Wednesday, January 17th, 11th doctoral and master's students at Huazhong Agricultural University collectively reported in real name their instructor for academic fraud. The report letter, an astonishing 129 pages long, reveals in excruciating detail their tutor's blatant academic misconduct, including fabricating data, shamelessly plagiarizing, and ruthlessly exploiting their students' academic achievements. This damning exposé doesn't stop there. It goes on to accuse the said instructor and some of his collaborators of falsifying a plethora of data, engaging in shameless plagiarism, improperly claiming credit, and outright pilfering students' hard-earned academic accomplishments. If that wasn't enough, they also stand accused of manipulating the peer review process to get their research articles published and defrauding national scientific research funding. Li Yuanhua, a historian living in Macau, didn't mince words when he said, "From this real-name report, we can see that corruption is not just a mere issue in CCP's higher education and research institutions. It's a cancer that has metastasized throughout the entire system. The educators, once respected figures, have now become unethical opportunists, and this disgraceful transformation has become an everyday occurrence." This extensive report meticulously catalogues the evidence, complete with professional analysis, leaving no doubt about the scale of the scandal. The informant claims to be a doctoral and master's student within the tutor's research group. Li Yuanhua, a historian residing in Australia, further dissected the dire situation, asserting that under the CCP system, the academic and scientific research circles are rife with a thirst for immediate success and an alarming prevalence of corruption. This, in turn, has grievously hampered the progress of scientific research. In fact, Li Yuanhua continued, over the years, the CCP has poured substantial resources into education, including scientific research. But why are the results so dismal? The stark reality is that the entire society is plagued by corruption, and the academic world is no exception. Gu Guoping, a retired university teacher in Shanghai, didn't mince words either when he pointed out that fraud isn't limited to academia alone. It has permeated every facet of life in mainland China. He went on to analyze the root causes, laying the blame squarely on the absence of a robust social system characterized by democracy, constitutionalism, freedom, and fairness. A damning indictment of the overall system. The Real Name report letter has generated widespread attention online, and the reporter has received overwhelming support from numerous netizens. Under mounting public pressure, Huazhong Agricultural University reluctantly announced that it would initiate an investigation into the matter. However, skeptics abound, dismissing the authorities' so-called investigation as nothing more than a staged performance for the public. Chinese concealment and delay in sharing COVID-19. Information fuel global outrage. The handling of the COVID-19 outbreak by the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, continues to raise concerns even after 4 years. Recent information quoted by U.S. media suggests that Chinese researchers had isolated and mapped the virus causing COVID-19 by the end of December 2019, which was at least 2 weeks before the CCP shared the virus's genetic sequence with the world. According to documents obtained by the U.S. House Energy and Commerce Committee on December 28, 2019, Chinese researcher Lily Ren uploaded the complete viral structural sequence to a U.S. government-run database. This means that structural information about the virus was known, but Chinese officials publicly described the Wuhan outbreak as a viral pneumonia of unknown cause and did not immediately take action to contain it. The delay in sharing this crucial information with the world cost precious time in dealing with the epidemic. Those extra 2 weeks could have been pivotal in helping the international medical community understand how COVID-19 spreads, develop medical defenses, and start work on a vaccine. The World Health Organization, WHO, timeline indicates that the CCP did not provide the virus's genetic sequence to the WHO until January 11, 2020, which was a 2-week delay compared to December 28, 2019. This delay was significant, given the urgency of the situation in late 2019. Furthermore, the WHO's virus tracking timeline reveals that the CCP did not proactively inform the WHO about the outbreak. WHO officials themselves discovered information about viral pneumonia on December 31, 2019, and requested relevant information from Chinese authorities on January 1, 2020. The CCP only requested information on January 3, further indicating a lack of transparency. These revelations suggest that Chinese researchers were aware of the new coronavirus before December 28, 2019, and that the CCP concealed this information from the international community. Virologists emphasize the need to be cautious about the accuracy of information released by the Chinese government regarding the virus's origin. China has consistently denied any cover-up and retaliated economically against countries that called for an independent international investigation into the virus's origins. The U.S. House of Representatives Energy and Commerce Committee Chair, Kathy McMorris Rogers, stated that this new information shows that the United States cannot trust any data provided by the CCP. The CCP's actions not only involved concealing the epidemic, but also obstructing the WHO's investigation. The WHO's Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus noted that the investigation team sent to Wuhan was hindered in obtaining data in China, and further investigation into the virus's origin was required. A report by Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives in August 2021 indicated that the virus may have been circulating as early as September 2019, raising questions about the true timeline of the outbreak. There have been accusations of a systematic cover-up by China, including the destruction of samples, hiding records, and silencing Chinese scientists, which has hindered efforts to uncover the truth.
是一般的什么，这应该是外卖界的神吧。
我们这儿接的就是食堂，在这个港区你没有办法使用，就从这一刻开始。
In recent years, China has been described as facing numerous challenges. Starting from the banking crisis, problems have arisen to the extent that even banks are left without money. How are ordinary people supposed to live in such circumstances? Recently, various local governments have been facing financial difficulties, to the point where they can hardly afford to pay salaries. In many places, salary cuts have been initiated, and some regions have even experienced months of unpaid wages. Shockingly, recent news reports reveal that some schools are unable to pay their electricity bills, leading to power cuts and the forced suspension of classes for all students. It's astonishing that such situations can occur in the 21st century, in a country where students can't even attend classes. A public school that receives full financial allocations is unable to pay its electricity bill, leading to a power cutoff by the Electricity Supply Bureau, forcing students to stay at home. According to the school teachers, they haven't received their salaries for 3 months. I find it perplexing because this is a public school with full financial support. The school shouldn't be under financial pressure, so why is this happening? This is an issue in my hometown, and I'm surprised because, firstly, it's 2024, and such problems still exist. However, simultaneously, I'm not surprised because during my school days, which were not too long ago, such situations were prevalent. Teachers in our region went without salaries for almost a year. You can imagine the impact on the quality of education. Teachers were changing schools and some even switched careers. The teachers were teaching half-heartedly. This was a common occurrence back then. I hope this is an isolated case, and I hope there are no financial issues in our government. Let's talk about a food delivery driver in Shanghai who has been delivering for 3 years, completing a total of over 110,000 orders and consistently ranking as the #1 delivery driver, cashing out 1.2 million. We're talking about the delivery guy in Shanghai. Of course, he doesn't work for Dada. Well, as for whether this is true or false, I think where there are people, there are different experiences, and there are things beyond our understanding. Speaking from my own experience, this year marks my 9th year in the delivery business. I achieved my first million in my 7th year. It took me until the 7th year to surpass 1 million. Of course, I deliver for Dada, while he delivers for Meituan's Lepao. The number of orders is quite high, with an average of over 100 orders every day. This means that each day he has to complete over 1,000 orders, including bonuses, to reach this achievement. In a year, it adds up to over 300,000 orders, and in 3 years, it's over 1 million. According to his own description, he spends 18 hours online every day, leaving little time for anything else. If we subtract time for meals and sleep, I wonder if he has even 4 hours of rest. To consistently maintain this kind of lifestyle year-round, I believe he must be an extraordinary person, perhaps even a god in the food delivery industry. Out of over 10 million delivery riders nationwide, I estimate there's only one like him. I don't recommend everyone imitate him because, whether you're working for any platform, it's impossible to achieve such a feat in just 3 words. If you're delivering for his platform, well, maybe you'll have more orders, either enjoying it or struggling through it. There's also the specialized delivery service, but are you a robot? Even with big data and algorithms predicting your earnings down to the hour, you'll only make around 30. If you manage to pull this off, you're essentially not sleeping for 24 hours. Of course, what I've encountered more often is pushing my body to the limit to take on more orders, ruining my health, and even facing sudden death in a rented room. Another risky behavior is running red lights. In a town in Henan province, public servants receive a monthly salary of 3,000 yuan. Their work hours are from 6 in the morning until 11 at night, which can be considered an overwhelming workload. Previously, I shared a story about a colleague in Henan who, during the first episode, co-submitted an article stating his annual income was 50,000 yuan, around 4,000 yuan per month with an additional bonus at the end of the year, totaling slightly over 50,000 yuan. However, in the second episode, his salary was reduced by 8,000 yuan, leaving him with just over 40,000 yuan. Therefore, the salary cut was quite substantial. Concerning the overall salary and benefits in Henan, I have previously covered this in a dedicated video. On average, the salaries in Henan are around 3,000 yuan. Some may be a bit lower, around 1,900 yuan, while others in certain industries or positions might be higher, ranging from 4,000 to 5,000 yuan. However, the average remains around 3,000 yuan. This applies specifically to public servants in Henan, whose monthly salary is around 3,000 yuan. Now, let's talk about a specific public servant in a rural area of Henan. I've been following him, and I recently saw that he posted 2 messages. The first message informed everyone to gather at 6 in the morning the next day for a meeting, followed by lunch and then starting work. The second message was about a meeting scheduled for 9 o'clock that night in the conference room to discuss matters for the next day. He mentioned that the meeting could last until around 11 or even 12 o'clock, making it an early start at 6 in the morning and a late finish at 11 at night, which is quite common. Many might wonder why the life of a public servant is like this. For instance, another colleague of mine who works in a more comfortable position in a larger department enjoys a relaxed schedule, working from 9 to 5. However, for the young public servant in the rural area of Henan, working in an office and engaging in poverty alleviation efforts, his workload is much heavier. When you combine all the unfavorable conditions on one person with low pay and demanding tasks, it becomes a normal phenomenon. Especially towards the end of the year, as I've mentioned in previous videos, there's a rush to meet performance targets, leading to tight schedules. This is especially true for rural towns, as they have to coordinate with numerous departments facing various policies, assessments, inspections, and acceptances. All of these responsibilities ultimately fall on the shoulders of those working in rural areas. Therefore, it's quite common for public servants in rural towns to work late until 11 at night during the end of the year. Year-end economic crisis, unpaid wages plague, Shenzhen and Guangzhou. At the end of the year, economic problems are emerging collectively. Those seeking payment or trying to escape debts are appearing, with a large number of people in Shenzhen and Guangzhou sleeping on the streets while demanding unpaid wages. Some have even gone without their salaries for 2 years. Employers are casually laying off employees, and suppliers, unable to collect debts, are dividing up resources on the spot. Mainland China's manufacturing industry is experiencing a severe decline, and the wave of demands for unpaid wages continues. At the year-end, there is no one to care. These rural migrant workers have been demanding unpaid wages here for such a long time, homeless, enduring daily rain, and still living here. In China, companies firing workers without fair reasons happens very often, and it's not surprising at all. When you use your legal weapons for arbitration or anything else will continue. In other words, starting from today, the company officially dismisses you. You are dismissed because you are not willing to compensate, right? Now, without any compensation, you can leave. You are not willing to compensate, right? What kind of notice do you want to issue to me? Let me tell you officially now, you can go. Now, you can go to the labor station and tell them that I'm not giving you any compensation. You don't need to stay here. Next, I will hold a meeting with them, and you don't have to participate. Starting tomorrow, you cannot enter this port area. You won't provide it, will you? I inform you. I don't have any notice now. I am forcibly dismissing you like this. I am forcefully releasing you. If I go to court, I am breaking the law. You can go. I don't need you now. You don't need to be here. You can go. You can go out. If you force me like this, you can go and sue, right? Should I pay this rent or not? I've been running my shop for 12 years, and business has never been as bad as it is this year. It's only January, and there are hundreds of thousands of yuan worth of goods in the store. I'm selling a few hundred or 1,000 yuan worth every day. You've got it all wrong. Completely wrong. In order to stimulate the economy, they're desperately flooding the market and aggressively lending to businesses. But have they ever thought that in a bad market, who would dare to borrow? Loans need to be repaid, right? If, in the end, I can't repay, they'll auction my assets at a low price and turn me into a defaulter. Is that effective? Right now, ordinary people don't have money to spend. Find a way to increase everyone's income or just give out money directly. If everyone has money, they'll change their spending habits, demand will surge, and you won't have to worry about businesses not expanding production. You keep giving me laxatives, but have you considered that maybe I haven't had a meal at all? Teachers' salaries unpaid. A bleak future for education in China. Recently, serious financial crises have erupted in many schools across China, dealing a heavy blow to the education system. The government's financial constraints have led to delayed funding for schools, pushing many institutions into operational difficulties. Some schools are even forced to reach out to parents for donations to maintain basic operations. The fundamental reason for this education crisis is the tight financial situation of the government. Schools, considered the cradle for nurturing future talents, are repeatedly frustrated due to financial problems. This not only reflects neglect towards the education sector, but also an oversight of the nation's future. The ineffective response from government officials has pushed schools to the brink of economic collapse. Many schools have to rely on the goodwill of parents to fill the financial gap, turning education into an exclusive realm for the wealthy. Economically disadvantaged students will lose the opportunity for quality education. Education should not become a luxury dictated by money. However, due to government inaction, this phenomenon is spreading in China. Furthermore, many teachers have not received their salaries for several months, undermining the foundation of those who are shaping the country's future, leaving them unsettled due to the government's financial mismanagement. This not only seriously damages the legitimate rights of teachers, but also inflicts significant harm on the education sector. When financial problems become the primary constraint, attracting capable individuals to engage in education becomes challenging. Schools facing power supply issues due to unpaid electricity bills are compelled to deal with power supply restrictions from utility companies. This results in a severe disruption of teaching activities, impacts students' academic progress, and leaves parents dissatisfied. In the contemporary knowledge economy, schools heavily rely on electricity for their normal operation. However, due to financial problems, the government is letting schools languish in darkness, which is a sacrilege against education. The plight of schools in China is not just a localized crisis, but a precursor to the collapse of the entire national education system. If the government cannot promptly address financial issues, more schools in China will be at risk of closure. This not only poses a significant burden on the country's future, but is also an irresponsible approach to education, which is the cornerstone of a nation's prosperity. The government's lack of concern, driven by financial difficulties, is deeply regrettable. The news about Chinese schools facing financial difficulties is not just a negative report, but also serves as a warning about societal responsibility. As China's financial issues continue to surface, mainland official media attempts to cover up the truth through the media. Recently, major official Chinese media outlets have been promoting a heartwarming story. An ordinary food delivery driver achieved financial freedom in just 3 years, earning over 1.2 million yuan. The report enthusiastically advocates that as long as ordinary people are willing to work hard, they can lead a comfortable life. However, behind this seemingly beautiful story lies real pain and helplessness. Let's examine the logic of this report together. If the delivery driver indeed earned 1.2 million yuan in 3 years, he would need to earn nearly 400,000 yuan per year. This means he would have to generate over 30,000 yuan in income every month. Calculated on a daily basis, he would need to earn more than 1,000 yuan per day. According to the current market conditions, a delivery driver can earn a maximum of 30 yuan per hour. Even if he worked continuously without sleeping for 24 hours, he would only earn 720 yuan per day. What's the truth behind this seemingly inspirational story? This is evidently a manipulation of data to mislead the public. The real culprit cannot deny that hardworking individuals deserve corresponding rewards. However, using such extreme and untrue examples to propagate the idea that hard work alone can lead to a good life will only cause more disappointment and heartache for those who genuinely toil away. Moreover, the beauty of life is not solely about the satisfaction of wealth and material possessions, but also about caring relationships between people and social justice. This absurd story is being used to drive the public towards the notion that working hard is the key to a good life. However, it is a mockery and an accusation that if your life is not good, it is because you are not working hard enough. This undoubtedly brings more significant psychological pressure to those who are already struggling and working hard. When evaluating a society's fairness and progress, we should not only focus on the wealth and success of the upper class, but also pay more attention to the well-being and rights of the people at the grassroots level. Reporting such success stories not only excessively beautifies reality, but also ignores the pain and effort of those who silently endure suffering to survive. They are also working hard, but they haven't achieved success and prosperity as described in the reported cases. This is undoubtedly a lack of respect and harm to the majority of people who are striving for a good life. Therefore, we need to be aware of not being deceived by these seemingly beautiful illusions. Instead, refocus attention on each person working hard for their livelihood. They don't need false encouragement, they need genuine respect and acknowledgement. These individuals are the cornerstone of human society, and their well-being and rights are the true wealth and strength of a nation.